honored today to have a pre-recorded video of students from Cedar Brae, Catherine Nichols Gunn, and Falcon Ridge Schools singing O Canada. I would ask everyone to follow the lead of the students.
Oki everyone. Oki means hello in Blackfoot. Today we're excited to share something truly special.
We're going to sing O Canada, but in Blackfoot. We were honored to receive permission from Sawaki Merle of the Kainai Nations to perform the song O Canada. She sang it at a Toronto Blue Jays game in 2022, highlighting how reviving Indigenous languages strengthens our communities.
The Blackfoot language has echoed across these lands for generations, a connection stretching since time immemorial.
It's more than just words. Blackfoot is rich with context and meaning, weaving us together with the land and our ancestors who lived in harmony and kinship with everything around them.
Blackfoot word carries a deep significance to the land and community. It's a way of understanding the world in a whole new light.
We would like to welcome Falcon Ridge Elementary School, Catherine Nichols Gunn Elementary School, and Cedar Brae Elementary School for the singing of O Canada in the Blackfoot language.
The Calgary Board of Education acknowledges the traditional territories and oral practices of the Treaty 7 nations, including the Siksika-Siksika, comprised of the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, and the Amskapi-Piikani nations. We acknowledge the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Ayarhe Nakota, comprised of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney nations, the Métis Nation within Alberta, and all people who make their homes in Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. The land on which we gather is traditionally known as Moginsitis, Gusise, Wincheespaw, and Otusquany. As a learning organization, we are committed to advancing the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action focused on education for reconciliation. Oki, Dadanastata, Ambawastich, Tonsei, Tanishi, bonjour, hello, and welcome to all of our staff and public in attendance at this meeting. I would note that Trustee Close is away on board business, but may try to join us for a portion of today's meeting. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Ms. Miner, do you have any changes that need to be noted?
Madam Chair, there are no agenda changes to be noted for today's meeting.
Thank you. Could I have a motion that the agenda be approved as submitted? Thank you, Trustee Vukadinovich. I'll call on each of you to vote in favor of the motion. Trustee Vukadinovich?
I vote in favor.
Thank you. Trustee Hack?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Dennis?
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee May?
In favor.
Thank you. I also vote in favor, so that is carried unanimously. The next item on our agenda is recognition of 2021 to 2025 Board of Trustees. Chief Superintendent Pittman, over to you.
Well, thank you, Chair Bolger and trustees, as today marks our last public board meeting together before the municipal election. I wanted to take a moment to reflect on the past 4 years and what we've accomplished together. Since 2021, we have welcomed almost 20,000 additional students, bringing our enrollment to over 142,000 students. We educate 1 in 6 Alberta students, as many of you have noted over the years in your debates. We've opened 5 new schools: Mahogany, Bayside, Lakeshore, Prairie Sky, and North Trail High School. We've figured out how to transition students and staff from a COVID environment to in-person learning focused on community. We've fine-tuned an equity index that has benefited schools and students needing extra support in the context of existing resources. As a Board of Trustees, over the past 4 years, you have attended hundreds of school council meetings, school events, graduations, connecting directly with parents, students, and staff. You've supported and challenged administration through your work on policy and your approval of items like capital planning criteria revisions, new reporting indicators, and you've paid careful attention to decisions that have long-term implications. You've read hundreds of reports and updates, asked probing questions, debating and making hard decisions around budget, programming, and policy updates, to name only a few. You've responded to media requests, provided interviews with many news outlets to ensure the public understands our system better. You've responded to questions from thousands of parents, students, and families on probably as many different topics as the number of individual requests you've received. You've supported the release of CBE Connections, a newsletter with important information for families across our system. You've celebrated numerous awards, including the Edwin Parr First Year Teacher Award, LEAD certifications, partner recognition of key community partners, and so much more. You've highlighted through your channels the incredible work happening in schools, resulting in high quality student achievement and strong community. You also hired me, so thank you. Finally, you've advocated continuously for the students and staff of CBE, holding meetings with MLAs, with the Minister of Education and Childcare, writing countless letters to government, requesting support where it is needed most. As a result of your advocacy during this term, 16 new schools have been approved and are set to be built over the next few years. Alongside that, you've ensured that dozens of modular classrooms have been added or are in the process of being added to accommodate our incredible enrollment growth. Even while labor action continues during this time, trustees have continued to advocate for CBE students and staff. You have strengthened and you continue to support a strong foundation for the CBE and the City of Calgary. On behalf of the CBE, its students and staff, and all citizens of Calgary who benefit from a strong public education system, I thank you. At this time, we'd like to share a video celebrating the work of the Board of Trustees.
It's incredible to think that 4 years have passed since we were sworn in together as trustees of the Calgary Board of Education. At that time, we were mostly new to the board, except for returning trustee Dennis and trustee Close, who had previously served many years earlier. There was much to learn, but with excellent support, thoughtful debate, and collaboration, we have reached the conclusion of our term. Over these past 4 years, our board has navigated a period of significant change, from legislative changes and curriculum to welcoming a new chief superintendent. We've also seen unprecedented growth with thousands of new students joining our schools, and we have celebrated major accomplishments along the way. Among these are 15 new schools for CB students and important adjustments to the provincial funding formula to better serve our students and communities. We would like to acknowledge the outstanding leadership of our Chief Superintendent, Joanne Pittman, and her team of superintendents who have worked tirelessly through truly unprecedented times. Their professionalism, high standards, and deep commitment to this board, to public education, and most importantly, to the students and families they serve are remarkable. We're deeply grateful for their dedication. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize Trustee Marilyn Dennis, who will not be seeking re-election this fall after 8 years of exceptional service as a two-term trustee. We wish her every success in her next adventures. Marilyn's unwavering focus on equity, her deep commitment to public education, and her strong representation of Wards 5 and 10 have been invaluable. She's an eloquent and strategic thinker, a relentless advocate for students, and a steadfast supporter of the Calgary Board of Education. During a time on the board, Marilyn has led with grace through extraordinary challenges, including a global pandemic, a ministerial order, unprecedented enrollment growth, labor action, and the hiring of 2 superintendents. Her impact extends from our local school board to the province as a whole as well, because she also stepped up to serve 2 years as the president of the Alberta School Boards Association. Her leadership has left a lasting impact on this system and on all of us who have had the privilege of serving alongside her. As we reflect on our term together, I'm proud of what we have accomplished, the challenges we've overcome, the foundation we have continued to build upon for future Calgary students. Thank you to my fellow trustees for your service and support of public education. Next on our agenda is item 8.1, 2026 to 27 Modular Classroom Program. Chief Superintendent Pittman, would you please introduce the report?
Well, thank you, Chair Bolger, and I recognize that after all of this work, we come to today's meeting and we still have work to do. And that before you today is the Modular Classroom Program submission for your review and approval. I believe you'll find that the submission reflects the objective of continuing to accommodate students that entered CB schools during recent record high enrollment years as close to home as possible, and this as rapidly as possible. Note also that the total number of modulars being requested in this report also speaks to the need felt by schools, with this being the 3rd consecutive year that we have recommended a request for over 60 modular classrooms supporting the learning needs of over 1,600 students. At this time, I'll invite Superintendent Breton to provide more details regarding this year's submission. Thank you.
Chair Bolger and trustees. After a thorough review of the needs across the system, and in keeping with Chief Superintendent Pittman's comments on the need to continue efforts to accommodate students closer to home, this year's modular classroom program proposes the addition of 64 new modular classrooms to augment student capacity at 15 schools. And not surprisingly, 60% of the schools identified within this report are in the northeast and southeast areas of the city, areas that have experienced the greatest enrollment and that account for approximately 2/3 of all the overflowing schools. This year, we also see Windsor Park School listed for the first time. It reopened this school year as a community school, but initially only as a K-3 to avoid having students experience multiple transfers between schools. And that explains, of course, the uncharacteristically low utilization rate for a school listed on this plan. Next year, it will expand to a full K-4 grade configuration, and this factor, coupled with the projected growth in the community, explains the need for modulars at this school now. And with that being said, we would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you both. Trustees, any questions or comments on this report? Trustee May, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering, can you speak to the trends in overflow and overflow receivers? So I can see that the number is down from last year, but it's still very high in comparison to the 2021-2022 school year.
Through the chair, you're quite correct there, Trustee May. In the 2021-22 school year, the CBE had 12 overflow schools with 16 overflow receiving schools. And by the end of the 2024-25 school year, so the previous school year, that number had tripled to 36 in overflow and 53 receiving. Thanks to the significant student accommodation measures put in place, along with the addition of 64 modulars for this school year alone, we've been able to start the school year a little bit lower. And now this school year, we're starting off with 31 schools that are in overflow and only 45 school receiving from those overflowing schools. But still, as you indicated, much higher than previous. Of course, we now have 15 new schools and 1 replacement school approved by the government at this time. And of course, though, until such time as these finally open, we'll continue to work diligently to remove overflows wherever possible through the measures that are available to us, and in so doing, keep students as close to home as possible.
Other questions? Go ahead, Trustee May.
Thank you. I'm wondering, does the 3-year school system accommodation plan, does it influence the modular report at all? I'm just wondering because we have lots of closed school statuses that are beyond the 100% mark. And I'm just kind of wondering how they're identified there, but then they're not reflected in the modular classroom plan.
Through the chair, quite right. So the 3-year system student accommodation plan does have a very broad system-wide overview and review, a monitoring of all of our schools that are either 70% or lower in terms of utilization, or 95% or higher in utilization, or if there's any specific system requirements that might be identified. And there are many things that can be done within the system without moving to modulars, recognizing again that we are about to see year 2 of the Schools Now program being approved next March. We saw that first year where we currently now have 15 new schools and 1 replacement school approved, and certainly hoping to see quite a number more. And so wherever possible, before we start looking at relatively expensive modulars, both for the province in terms of procuring and installing, but also for the CB in terms of fitting up, we do look at various options that might be able to avoid those more costly measures. Sometimes there are some minor adjustments that can happen within a school. For example, a modification internally to create an additional school's classroom space, to reclaim space that wasn't properly being utilized. We might be in a situation where we can change the grade configuration of various schools to help with enrollment pressures, make changes to designated communities to a school. And of course, overflows are also another measure. And then based on that larger, more holistic review, there comes a point where there is a determination to say, well, for those different reasons, what is possible and what is not possible, modulars do end up being a favorable or a desirable outcome for potentially for a school. And that's where then we send those schools through the filters of the modular classroom program to ultimately arrive at the recommendations before you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll maybe just ask one, or go ahead, Trustee May, you go ahead.
I was leaving space for others, for attachment 6, it talks about Midson School and that there's a provincial capacity error that inflated the utilization. I'm just wondering, was this a one-off, or did this affect a couple of like those middle school grades?
Through the chair, I believe through this modular classroom program, this is the only school where we've seen a little bit of a error that has been captured and that we are currently working to correct. Every year, the province requires school boards to submit information on how spaces are used and what spaces are available within schools, whether they're leased or depending also on things like grade configuration. In this case, it's a grade configuration error that ultimately ended up impacting the capacity of the school. So Alberta Education's and Childcare's formula essentially accounts for gymnasium space as counting as part of the instructional space. So it creates a larger school capacity. Midson School, the regular program definitely is grades 7 to 9. However, some of the automated mechanisms that we have to help rapidly download information from all our schools would catch that we do have, I believe, 2 students in a specialized class that are in grade 6 in Midson. And unfortunately, that triggered the information being uploaded to Alberta Education to indicate that the school had a grade 6. But again, it was simply 2 students. And so that changed the way the province then calculated the capacity for that school. Grades or kindergarten through to grade 6 schools, the gymnasium is not included as part of that calculation. So it reduced the size, therefore artificially inflating the overall utilization rate for that school. So we do have those errors occasionally. There are mechanisms in place to correct those, and we work with Alberta Education to make sure they get that correct information.
Trustee May?
I guess just a follow-up from that. So I'm guessing that what you referenced that we submit to the provincial government is kind of part of the school enrollment report that we would normally get in November, December. So is that kind of where they get the understanding of our utilization and what we use for classrooms? Something just kind of triggered that, so they do kind of know how many students we have, what we've reclaimed, so they kind of know where we've used spaces that were originally not intended for classrooms, use as classrooms. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Through the chair, partially. The school enrollment report that is brought to the Board of Trustees, typically in that early December timeframe, is informed by end September enrollment count. And so for certain, that count is provided to the ministry. What is then also informing their calculations is something called the ACU, or the Area Capacity Utilization. And that's why I mentioned, for example, lease spaces. And so depending on the nature of the lease, there are areas that can be carved out of a school and then are not considered as part of the total capacity of the school in recognition of those spaces not being used for instructional purposes. And so as to not, again, impact the utilization rate, the actual utilization rate of the school. So there's 2 factors that come to play. There's that enrollment count that, again, is seen as part of the enrollment report that is brought to this team. But then ultimately, there's another area capacity utilization report, which is not something that is necessarily brought to the Board of Trustees.
I'll just jump in right here. The report indicates that there are additional costs that will be incurred by the CBE should we granted all of these modulars, and they come out of our repository funds, which is part of our capital reserves. So is there any concern with the availability of those funds should we be granted all 64 modulars?
To the chair. So in terms of concerns currently, short term, no concerns, in the sense that the capital reserves that are currently in place would suffice for the opening of the 15 new schools, the replacement school that's been approved, and as well as any modulars that that are listed and identified here within this report. Longer term is where the concerns start arising, in the sense that in the past, how these funds are replenished were through the sale of fee simple properties, and these properties would be sold at fair market value by the board, and of course by the Calgary Board of Education, and those funds would then replenish the capital reserve. That said, the last spring, the government introduced the Real Property Governance Act. That act makes it so that we must now, if we are to dispose of fee simple property, offer that property to Alberta Infrastructure at net book value. And of course, given the fact that these properties date from 1985 or earlier, the net book value is typically relatively low, and ultimately means that it could jeopardize our ability to continue to replenish those funds.
Thank you for that. Trustees, any other comments or questions on this report? Trustee Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. So another incredible number of requests in this modular program, requests heading to the province, which certainly demonstrates our need. Just based on our existing experience and current experience, I guess, in having modulars installed at some schools, what would you say might be a reasonable timeline in terms of when we might see, these modulars arrive at our school sites?
Through the chair. The experience that we have had is that we are typically seeing approvals these last 2 years by the province in 2 stages for modular classrooms. A smaller announcement typically in mid-March, and then a larger approval in the July-August timeframe. So typically we would say that it takes about 9 months after approval for installation, but that is impacted by those winter months. And depending on how early we get that approval, we can be limited and not be able to proceed with installation over those winter months, and that can drag things out. And so what we're seeing more recently, based on that kind of timeline, is that we are able to deliver them in time for the next school year. So this would be in place for the 26-27 school year. Of course, we also, though, sometimes run into issues like we did with this school year's round of modular installations, where unfortunately we did have an electrical subcontractor that was used by a large number of our general contractors declare bankruptcy. And then that was probably the single largest impact that we had on our ability to open all of our modulars at the start of this school year. But so again, an approval probably in the March, and then again in August, we could probably see those in place by September of 2026. Oh, correction, September 2027, because that would be the March 2026 approval.
Other comments or questions? All right. Is there a trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding this report? Trustee Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. I'll bring forward the motion that the Board of Trustees approves the 2026-27 modular classroom program submission.
Thank you. Do trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approves the 2026-27 modular classroom program submission. Trustee Dennis, would you please open debate?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So thank you so much for, I guess, the presentation of the report and for answering trustees' questions today. Really, this motion is pretty straightforward around our ask and is a clear indication of the need of our need for space. What is not quite so straightforward, though, is the incredible work that is being done by the system to be able to accommodate our growing enrollment and the many pressure points that we have for families. So although I anticipate my fellow colleagues voting in favor of this motion because it is a reasonable and fair ask, certainly would also look forward to the government approving these as well for us and funding for these so that we can, again, as what is continuing to be a priority for us is to allow students to attend school closer to home. So with that, with gratitude for the work on the report, for the reasonable and fair asks that will serve 1,600 students within our system and create additional space, I'll just turn it over to the rest of my trustees for debate.
Thank you, Trustee Dennis. Trustees, anyone for first round of debate? Trustee Vukadinovich?
Yes, I mean, I do intend to vote in favor of this recommendation as well, because we do desperately need the additional school space. But I say that knowing that we don't just desperately need school space, we also need an increase in operating funding for these school spaces as well. As a lot of folks around the table already know, school boards across Alberta have had to work with flat per student funding for the past 6 years, since 2019. And this has landed us in a spot where Alberta now has the very lowest level of per student funding in Canada, the very lowest. In the meantime, the cost of everything has gone up. The cost of utilities, paper, smartboards, laptops, the desks that go into regular classrooms and modular classrooms, everything has gone up. This means we've had 6 straight years of trying to do more with less. And I'm worried that this puts public education at risk, because the reality is across Alberta, we do less with less. So to invest in and protect Alberta's future prosperity, somehow the next board that's elected needs to convince the provincial government to bring per student funding up to the level of the Canadian average. This would require an additional $1 billion across Alberta on an annual basis. And an announcement of a $1 billion increase in operating funds, which the provincial government could make today at current enrollment levels, would allow the CBE and other public school boards in Alberta to bring down class sizes and increase the supports we provide to students with complex needs. An announcement of $1 billion today from the provincial government for school boards across Alberta, for public school boards across Alberta, would allow the school boards to make a plan for a responsible way to allocate those funds. School boards could use that money today to hire additional teachers and educational assistants, and as school boards responsibly plan out a way to ramp up the hiring over the next few years, school boards could use any difference in the meantime to address the hundreds of millions in deferred maintenance that we have. So $1 billion in additional operating funds, we could use that today, and I'm definitely going to vote in favor of this modular classroom plan because we need these additional spaces, but we absolutely also need additional operating funds.
Thank you, Trustee Vukadinovich. Anyone else for first round or debate? Trustee May?
Thanks. I'm in favor of the motion. Reclaiming spaces and creating new learning spaces has been necessary. We have rapid enrollment growth and we're just squished. And so I was proud that we funded some movement of some modulars last year. I'm happy to see that we're getting asks awarded by the provincial government. I think that's a good thing. And I'm hoping that we get a lot more again, just so that we can just even manage the crunch that we're facing.
Thank you. Anyone else for first round? Trustee Hack?
Thank you. As always, it's important that the board of trustees support student success. We as a board have been advocating for more space for the influx of students at the CB for the majority of our term. I believe the number was quoted this morning, 20,000 extra students over the last 4 years. Between our capital plan asks that are submitted yearly, the out-of-cycle requests that we were able to pull together to support students, and our modular requests, it shows our dedication to getting more space for overcrowded classrooms, squishy, in any and every way we can. Neither new builds nor modulars come at cost neutral to the CBE, though these have real price tags that are attached to CBE's had to fund out of our dwindling capital reserves. I'm committed to doing everything we can as a board to have more space for our students to learn in that are closer to home. It's a strong value that this board has. And CBE remains the #1 choice for families in Calgary with good reason. Public education serves the common good. So I'm happy to vote in favor of the motion before us today.
Thank you, Trustee Hack. And I'll just round this out that I really do appreciate this well thought out report that aligns to the criteria that we've set. We know that our schools continue to see exceptional enrollment growth with dozens in overflow and students traveling well outside of their communities to attend school. And this modular classroom program request of 64 new units is very much needed. And as we say, these are needs, not wants, and they are required to support Calgary's students and their families. So I support the submission to Alberta Education and Childcare and stress the need for approval of all 64 units that are requested. Is there anyone who wishes to enter second round of debate? Seeing none, Trustee Dennis, would you, Trustee Vukadinovich, second round?
Sure. I did want to bring another issue as well. As I said, I intend to vote in favor of the recommendation because we need every single one of these modular classrooms. And we know we have tens of thousands of students waiting for a space in their closest community school. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not as simple as just the additional space. We also need an increase in operational funds if we are to move the needle on class sizes. And another piece is that we need the provincial government to have another look at how school utilization rates are calculated. We heard some of that earlier today, and it creates red tape and bureaucracy and creates a distorted picture of how well used public schools are in Alberta. Currently, only public schools in Alberta have operating funds clawed back when we fall below what essentially works out to 32 students per class from kindergarten to grade 12. Charter schools and private schools do not. I encourage folks who are tuning into this meeting to read page 69 of the Provincial Government School Funding Manual, where you will see the list of schools that are specifically and explicitly exempted from this clawback. This is the #1 reason why private schools and charter schools can offer smaller class sizes than public schools at taxpayers' expense, of course. And a way to solve this would be for the provincial government to edit page 69 to also exempt public schools from having our operating funds clawed back when we have good class sizes. Because otherwise we just end up in a negative feedback loop. The provincial government gives us more spaces. More spaces allows us to have smaller class sizes. Smaller class sizes means we get funding clawed back for falling below the school utilization calculation rate, which again, charter schools and private schools do not have their funding clawed back for that reason. We fall below that, we get our funding clawed back, then we have to tighten the belt. That means we can't hire the number of teachers and EAs we want to, which means class sizes grow again. It's a negative feedback loop. It's a piece of red tape. And it's something where I would like to see the provincial government level the playing field and give us the same deal that private and charter schools have right now, where they do not receive clawback of operating funds. So it's another issue that has to be addressed in addition to additional space.
Thank you. Any other trustees for second round? Okay, Trustee Dennis, now do you wish to close?
Thank you so much, Chair Bolger. Happy to close. So appreciate the words of support coming from my colleagues around this very fair, reasonable, and much needed request for new modular units for a number of our locations. So happy that we'll be supporting that and sending this request off to government shortly. Would also acknowledge and echo some of the concerns that have been identified by my colleagues here today, in particular around a challenge moving forward and how do we replenish capital reserves, and capital reserves that the school board has used very judiciously and very carefully in terms of fitting up new schools, and obviously to also fit up and complete the installation of modulars. So while I'm happy to be sending this request off to government, I would urge the next board that while they're advocating for our capital requests, including the modular units, that they would work with government to find a remedy to our ability then be able to continue to add to our capital reserves so that we can fit up schools and fit up modular units in the way that Calgarians have come to expect. So looking forward to seeing these modulars installed at some of our schools as we continue to work to accommodate the thousands of students that we welcome each year into our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now call on each of you individually to indicate whether you're in favor or opposed to the motion. Trustee Dennis.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee Hack.
In favor.
Thank you. Trustee May.
In favor.
Trustee Vukadinovich.
In favor.
Thank you. And I also vote in favor of the motion, so that is carried unanimously. That brings us to the consent agenda of our meeting. There were no items pulled from consent. As such, all items will be deemed to be approved with the agenda. This concludes the public portion of today's meeting. The board has 1 legal, 2 labor, 2 land matters, and 2 strategic planning matters to deal with in private. I would like to thank all of you who joined us for the meeting, and the meeting is now adjourned.